is this, but we just have to do something. Let's go straight into it. It's our very first class. We have one course, CLL307, and we're taking our bearing from the sources of law. With this being said, let's go straight into it. Okay. We have CLL307. Please permit me to, all right, do less of writing and more of explanation, please. Okay. We have limited time to spare, so we need to be more of explanation and less of writing, so we can move at a very fast pace. Okay. So now we have it. It says sources of law. Okay. When we say sources of law, what are we talking about? We are simply talking about the Bible, the guide, all right, the genesis, the origin whereby law are being generated from. So, to mention but a few, we're going to talk about the primary source, all right? We're going to talk about the primary source, and as well, we're going to look at some other sources as well. So, to start with, what is the primary source, all right, of law? Okay, what is the primary source of law? Now, the primary source of law in Nigeria legislation and statutes consists of other statutes and sub legislations. The primary, when we say primary, we're talking about first-hand information, all right? The first-hand source of law in Nigeria precisely, all right? Primary source of law. So we have the primary source of law in Nigeria consists, all right, of what we call statutes and subsidiary legislations. Okay, we have statutes and subsidiary legislation. Okay, so now let's take a step further. Now, speaking of statutes and subsidiary legislation, okay, statutes are laws that are made by legislator or a body so duly constituted and authorized to enact law. All right. Speaking of statutes, they are, we said it's a combination of statutes and subsidiary legislations. So therefore, what we say statutes, what are we talking about in essence? Statutes are said to be, all right, made by legislators. Okay, it is the responsibility of the legislator to make statutes. All right, they are made by legislator or a body so duly constituted and authorized to enact laws. While subsidiary legislations are also known as delegated. All right, delegated legislation. Okay, when we say delegated legislation, what are we talking about in essence? All right, delegated legislation or subsidiary legislations are known as, all right, they are seen as statutory, all right, statutory instruments and are usually entrusted to ministers or commissioners. We are simply talking about that ability to make law based on delegated responsibility, all right? And it is usually committed or entrusted with ministers and commissioners. So now the primary source of law consists of ordinances, acts, law, decrees, edicts, depending on the statutes and the issue of the authority. Okay, having talked about the statutes, all right, law made by the legislation, okay, it's a combination of ordinances, acts, laws, decrees, and edicts. Okay, so when a law said on the primary source of law, so let's quickly touch on what we call the statutory, all right, materials. All right, the statutory material is also a good source of law. Now, when we say statutory material, this includes statutes like Sales of Good Acts, all right, Infants Relief, Partnership Acts. These are good examples of statutory material. Don't forget, we said statutes are those law made by a body or an authority by the government to make laws. So this statute that it is used by that body to make this law, all right, some, all right, in the process of making this law, materials are essentials, and these materials, all right, are used in the process of making statutes. These materials, good example of these materials are materials like Infant Relief Acts, Partnership Acts, and just to mention but a few. We also have what we call judiciary material, all right? But let's leave that for some other time. Let's restrict that to the private class, and let's take a step further. Now, reasons for studying all sorts of law is very important in the sense that it affords an understanding of various means by which the law governing the society is made, all right? It affords the understanding of lawmaking process, all right? It affords the understanding of lawmaking process. It also affords the means by which authoritative written materials are derived, all right? Authoritative written materials are derived. So we have that as that. So we also have what we call the secondary source of law. Now, under the secondary source of law, these are legal journals, all right? Legal journals are the most current sources of law because their frequency, all right, of publications and some be monthly, yearly, quarterly, all right, and the likes. Now, they contain scholarly articles, commentaries, notes, and comments on current legal problems, all right? So under the secondary source of law, we have the likes of legal journals, okay? Legal journals makes up for secondary source of law. As well, we also have foreign material, and we have that as that. Another secondary source of law is also known as words and phrases defined. Okay, this covers wide areas of definitions and interpretations of legal expressions, words and phrases defined. A very good secondary source of law. Okay, so we have that as that. Now let's take a step further. Let's quickly touch on the judiciary system before colonization. Okay, what was the judiciary system like? Okay, before the colonization. Now, before the introduction of the British system of government and its courts in Nigeria, each tribe had developed their separate customary law that binds the people. All right, so pre-colonization, what exists was customary laws. This is what binds the people. This is what guides the people. Okay, we have the likes in the northern part. Now, customary law that binds the people in the northern states. All right, the emir is a supreme ruler. An example of the northern state where the emir is a supreme ruler with his advisors, all right, constitute the supreme court of the land. All right, so that is more like the responsibility of the supreme courts in the northern state before the colonization, where we have the emir as the executive head. We also have the alcalis, who are teachers of the law, more like lawyers. And in the west, we have the obas, all right, and in the east, we have elders and councils. This was what it was like before colonization, all right. So in our next class, we take it up from customary, all right, law. If it was because of time and poor network issue, we would have covered a lot more than this tonight. So we apologize for that. And we promise that in our next class, we should have sufficient time And we pray we have network on our side and we can cover a lot of things. Do have a wonderful evening and bye for now.